It is a very volatile, highly emotional industry. We talk about what is the American dream. It's buying a home. 60% of a consumer's decision is predicated on emotions. So there's the dominant, there's the influence, there's the steady and conscientious. DISC is not a personality, it's a behavior. Where people make tactical mistakes in DISC is they don't do a good enough job observing the other person's style. And if you play the equation in the science, you will win. The platinum rule is treat people the way that they want to be treated.
Hi everyone, Serena Diaco here, and welcome back to The Digest by AD Mortgage, your trusted source for insights into the mortgage industry. Today, we're talking about behavior, communication, and what it takes to connect with all types of people. That includes clients, partners, and teammates. Joining us today is Nathaniel Bittman, Assistant VP at Hancock Whitney Bank. He's also a state educator and a certified instructor in emotional intelligence and DISC behavior management. We'll explore how top-performing brokers adjust their style, how they read people, respond with clarity, and build trust with clients from every background. Let's dive in. So Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're honored to have you and learn from you. So you're certified in behavioral science and DISC. Can you tell me when this first came about that you realized this would be beneficial in the mortgage environment?
Yeah, the mortgage industry is interesting. I mean, it is a very volatile, highly emotional industry. You figure, a real estate agent is going to show a consumer a home. And most consumers that are looking to buy a home, they get excited about that. We talk about what is the American dream? It's buying a home. Well, one of the obstacles is real estate agent takes somebody out, they show them a home, that individual wants to buy it. And sometimes when they get to a mortgage company or a bank or a lending institution, sometimes those dreams can be taken away and there's the frustration and the fear and the anxiety that sets in. Then what if somebody didn't qualify for a loan and now they can't buy that home? That really takes them to the next stage in their life. So I recognized earlier on that there were so many obstacles and moving pieces and parts and challenges between real estate agents, loan originators, title companies, appraisers, and so many different styles, personalities, behaviors. How do we blend that together so everybody can work to make sure that the consumer's dream comes true?
Start me from the beginning. What is DISC? How can it help our mortgage professionals, and why is it a benefit?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of really different great styles or behavioral styles, so to speak. Emotional intelligence, sort of like the sort of grandfather, the overarching real behavioral science. We talk a lot about, we know that what science has shown us is that when you look at most individuals out there, 60% of a consumer's decision is predicated on emotions. And we look at most individuals out there that are professionals, you would think that IQ would supersede someone's ability to show what their success level is going to be, but it's really not. Your IQ is set by the time you're at the age of 7. So whether you're 67 or whether you're 7, your IQ doesn't change. Then we talk a lot about personality. Does that have a lot to do with it? We see that's about 4 or 9% of somebody's success rate, but it's really EQ, which is kind of the acronym for emotional intelligence, is what takes person to that next level. The ability to identify emotions and define them takes that person to 60% of where the success level is. So DISC, which is really 4 different letters, right? It's DISC. So there's the dominant, there's the influence, there's the steady and conscientious. That's more of a very specific descriptive style based on how people behave based on a situation.
Sorry, I was still stuck on the 7-year-old thing. My son is 7. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, his IQ, this is going to be his IQ for life?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what science says.
Amazing. And in your experience, can you walk us through how knowing your borrower, for our loan officers out there, knowing your borrower can really change the way you approach a conversation? So knowing this behavioral stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll just kind of we'll define DISC a little bit further. I think it's really important, first and foremost, for people to understand that DISC is not a personality, it's a behavior. So it was created by Dr. Marston, and it was a thought process centered around people and individuals have 4 primary behavioral styles on how they handle situations. So anything from, brushing your teeth to driving your car to handling obstacles and challenges. How do you handle contract negotiations? How do you handle buying a car? Your behavioral style has a lot to do with that. And with these 4 primary styles, my approach was the conflict. I was having a real difficult time being able to connect with certain individuals, and I couldn't understand why. I'm not afraid to talk to people, as you could tell. I'm not afraid. I have no call reluctance. I have a theatrical background, so there was no fear of audiences, but I just couldn't connect with people. And I had to identify, is it me? And somebody out there might be thinking that. Is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Why am I not making that connection? Is there something wrong with the way I look? Is the way I sound? And we start to self-reflect and self-diagnose, and that has this horrible mental impact on salespeople or anybody that's out in public. So I discovered DISC, and what I realized was that it's not a personality, it's science, and based on where you fall in the DISC profile will determine how you handle a situation. So somebody who's a high I may not communicate well with somebody who's a high C, and we could certainly talk about that later, but that's really the journey. I think that may answer your question.
It did. And specifically, how would you advise our brokers and our partners handle skeptical borrowers per se?
So looking at borrowers as a whole, we have to recognize one and foremost, we'll go back to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, a consumer is going to be triggered. So if they're in a real estate transaction, they are triggered in the sense that now they found a home, they want to buy it. You got to know their payment, they got to know their closing costs, they have to know all these variables, they have to know if they qualify, they have to know what documentation somebody has to have, they got to go through the pre-approval process, and they have to go through the clearing of conditions, they have to get an appraisal done. And for those of you that are listening, know exactly the list that I'm talking about. Every one of those stages creates a little bit of a trigger effect for a consumer, especially a first-time home buyer. DISC helps you because it really crystallizes that individual's ability, meaning my ability to know what's my communication style, and DISC helps me identify that, and then what's the other individual's communication style and how best can they receive information so I can navigate them through that trigger stage to a place of focus and calmness so that we can arrive at a deadline and everybody's successful.
In this situation, what are some common mistakes that you see in the way that loan officers and brokers are handling those conversations?
Yeah, so I would say that one, identifying your style and staying within the lane of your style and fine-tuning that. The most important part is we all become so engrossed about ourselves. How do we sound? How do we look? That we forget to think about the recipient. So it's not so much about, you have to know your individual style, but where people make tactical mistakes in DISC is they don't do a good enough job observing the other person's style and then really playing to that. It's just a science. And if you play the equation in the science, you will win if you understand the other person's style and how you adapt to that.
And I guess now let's kind of transfer this to operations and teams. You train teams. How do you think this can be beneficial for, let's say, processors, account executives, which you met with us today?
Sure.
Maybe even operations teams like underwriting.
Drastic stylistic differences. People in processing and underwriting and operations have significantly different styles than those that are in sales. When you're dealing in a hyper challenging market like the one that we're in right now, where mortgage rates are volatile, we see fluctuations in peaks and valleys in appraised values. We're seeing, appraisals being cut back. We're seeing home prices shift from highs and lows. There's just so much going on that it takes a very unique person to be a salesperson as a loan originator. Generally speaking, most of those people are typically going to be high Ds or high Is, mostly high Ds. Just because high Ds really welcome a challenging environment and they really flourish in this one. It's not to say the other styles don't, they do, but it's just different. So with that, because you have high dominant style people that are developing most of the business, on the other end, the people that are closing the business and making the decisions are generally people that are higher in compliance or higher in steady. So a much slower pace, a much more analytical pace. So you go from fast paced, assertive, maybe perceived as aggressive, somebody that is more risk-based, to really delivering business to somebody that is more calculated, methodical, more cautious, more slower pace. So significant differences between the two. And that brings up a point to your earlier question. When you mix the two, if the dominant style person doesn't know how to communicate effectively with the person that is high in compliance or high and steady, it's not going to work. Someone is going to have to give. And it's adapting to that style to make that happen.
I'm pulling all these different conversations that had happened in my daily job when I was an account executive. And it's just interesting to see how different those conversations could have went, I guess, if I really understood the different behavioral types, because there are many times that I have, I guess you could say, bowed up to a high D, which, as we discussed earlier, might not be the best way to approach it. Sometimes they might like it, depending on the situation, they might not. And there are times that I have challenged a very strong D, where maybe I could have backed off a little bit and went more into the I route, maybe a little more talkative, handle things differently. But really interesting to see how this could affect our team.
And your perspective is good. I mean, that's exactly, just from an earlier question, how do you apply this? I think in the short term that we've been having this conversation in today's session, you're already thinking of, okay, how do I approach that dominant style person? At what time do I want to? Dominant style people that are high Ds have challenging dispositions. They want to be right. They have a challenging disposition. They want to argue. They're always looking for a challenge. Sometimes pulling yourself back and being submissive to that isn't necessarily always the right decision. Dominant style people that have a challenging disposition want to work with people that are equally as challenging or confident, because it gives them reassurance that you think and operate the same as they do. So we talk a lot about, I think is it the golden rule? I may get the platinum rule. It's not treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? The platinum rule is treat people the way that they want to be treated. And I think it's the same thing when we talk about the behavioral sciences and DISC. If you're a high I and you're operating with a D, you're both very fast-paced people. You're already going to work well together. Now the question becomes, do you entertain a challenging disposition? Do you let that person win? But at some point, you have to know the game that I'm going to have to push back at some point if I'm going to want to be able to find room for negotiation and earn respect.
Regarding emotional intelligence, you said it's a huge buzzword. What does emotional intelligence look like in daily mortgage? So go to work. How would I recognize emotional intelligence, or can I even recognize
You
it?
can, absolutely, yes. So we talk about there's the emotional contiguon. Everybody has about a 3-foot space around them, and the emotional contiguon is if you're very negative that day, or if you're around somebody who's negative, the emotional contiguon is gonna, within that 3-foot radius, it's gonna send off those vibrations to people, and they're gonna consume that. And we do know that people have a propensity to lean more towards the negative than the positive. It's just kind of how we're built. We're built for fight or flight, and we tend to have, fear does consume us today with all the propaganda and the media and everything else. So yes, where does emotional intelligence fit into it? Well, number one, there's 4 quadrants to emotional intelligence. There's self-awareness. And number one in this business, when you're entering the mortgage business for that day, if somebody is going out and they want to get pre-approved for a loan, that individual is probably very nervous. They're not sure what they qualify for. Things that may have been lying dormant for a long time, like their credit, some decisions they made over their lives, is now going to come to surface. Because once you do a forensic review of them, you're going to learn about their credit, their income, whatever their past history is, if they were divorced, what the outcome of that is. So people tend to get nervous when they go through that pre-approval process. They're uncertain. So the emotional intelligent part is you need to be really socially aware of that recipient on the other end. What are they experiencing? What are they going through? And applying tactical skills through DISC, knowing how to ask those right questions, creates the social awareness, creates the self-awareness on yourself and the self-management, ultimately getting to relationship management. It's all math. So at the end of the day, what I really hope everybody understands is dive into this material, understand it. It'll help you sleep better at night. Once you learn that the way our brains work, the way our bodies function, the environment around us, how we get triggered by situations and circumstances, science does have a solution and an equation. All salespeople want an equation, and there is a formula to get to the other side. You just have to be able to be a student of the game and want to embrace it. Quadrant 1 is going to be self-awareness. Okay. Self-awareness, and thank you for correcting that. We know we have that perimeter. So self-awareness is, how am I feeling at this moment in time? When I walk through the door, was I stuck in a significant traffic jam? Did I have an argument with my spouse? Were my kids very difficult this morning? So you kind of walk through the door for work. You need to be self-aware. What am I feeling right now? What's happening to me? Is my heart rate up? Am I off? That's self-awareness. Quadrant 2 is self-management. If I know that I'm off, how do I self-regulate that? How do I manage that? What do I need to do to get myself in check, so I'm in balance? Then quadrant number 3 is going to be social awareness, which is an area that a lot of people lack that skill. It's really being able to understand and identify what is it that you're going through. I have to get below the surface. On the surface, you might appear like you're very happy because you're putting on a front. But below the surface, you might be having a lot of stress and anxiety in your life. So a great tactician in emotional intelligence knows how to ask those right questions to go below the surface in quadrant 3, social awareness. And then you arrive at relationship management. Once I'm in control, I know how to ask the right questions. I can identify to go below the surface, what are your needs? Then from there, we can figure out how to get to relationship management, which is we're going to manage this relationship so we get to the outcome that wins for both of us.
Great, thank you. And do you have tips for our partners to stay emotionally balanced? The best way to do so?
Self-awareness, so to me, the grandfather, it all goes back to emotional intelligence. I would recommend that in someone's journey, spend some time. You can get onto TED Talks, some great emotional intelligence TED Talks, and some great TED Talks and DISC. So you can do it relatively free to get yourself trained on it. But it starts with self-awareness, emotional intelligence. What are you experiencing at that moment in time? If you're having a very difficult day and you're really stressed out and you're having a high level of anxiety, there is no way that I can help you through that if I'm experiencing the same thing. If I can't recognize what I'm experiencing and feeling before I have that, and I think that's where a lot of managers fail, and I think that's maybe where a lot of real estate agents and mortgage professionals sometimes fail. They're not checking themselves at the door. They're not being self-aware before they engage the consumer. And what will absolutely vehemently be one of the most emotional experiences in their lives is a purchase of a home for them, or refinancing a debt and paying off debt so they can move forward in their lives, or purchasing a bunch of investment properties that eventually at some point in time is going to create real estate wealth. It's a very emotional transaction.
My last question, just to wrap everything up. Just by understanding people better, what's one simple mindset shift that our brokers can make to really change their business starting tomorrow?
Recognizing, well, I would start with DISC. Do a complete profile, invest in identifying what are your strengths, what are some of your limitations, and then really investing time in identifying not all limitations are weaknesses, they can also be strengths. Knowing how to leverage that and recognizing this, it's the brain. Recognizing that you have an amygdala, it's where all of your emotions are stored. The goal is to go from the emotional amygdala of the brain to get to the prefrontal cortex of the brain where all emotions are rationalized. To do that, leveraging sciences like DISC, emotional intelligence, and using techniques like how do I become self-aware? How do I know what happens to me? How do I self-regulate? What type of questions can I ask based on identifying my style? So we talked about it earlier. If I'm an I and you're an I, we could sit here forever and have a conversation and we may never arrive anywhere. But now all of a sudden you put a high compliance person to sit with us and that person is thinking, why are these people going in circles? Well, we could have a great time, but there's a third person here that's absolutely losing their mind and thinking we're going nowhere with this conversation. If we wanted to have a purposeful conversation with the three of us, so if you're a real estate agent and I'm a mortgage professional and the client is a high compliance person, I have to be able to say, I understand your style, you're going to talk a lot, I'm going to talk a lot, we're going to create a lot of visual imagery, but that's going to make that person who's high compliance, they're going to completely get derailed in this conversation and they're going to lose us and we're going to lose instant credibility. I know where my limitations are, I got to talk less. And if I'm in a conversation with you with a client, I might navigate it to say, let's get to the point, let's be more data driven because this client is all about data and getting to the facts that are most important and what's the process. So it's adapting from my style to understand theirs and changing some of those strategies. So how do you start? Take a DISC profile, take some TED Talks, jump into a class, take some seminars. You can leverage a lot through ChatGPT these days and get a lot of information that way. And just start to experiment, start to identify and really play around with it. My best suggestion is short term, but it will make a difference. I promise if you invest yourself in it and really learn it and really consume it and make it part of your life, it will make a difference.
Great. Thank you, Nathaniel, again. learned a lot from you, from our session and from our talk now.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you. And thanks to all of your team and all the wonderful people here at AD Mortgage. You all have a great professional outfit, and congratulations to all of your success. You're a great organization. I think a lot of originators out there should be very proud to work with you and the work that you do here. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In this business, it's not just about what you say. It's about how well you listen, how clearly you communicate, and how deeply you understand the person across from you. Brokers who master that skill build better relationships and longer careers. Now we want to hear from you. What matters more in sales? Adaptability or consistency? Drop your answer in the comments, and we'd love to learn from your experience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more expert conversations. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and let's continue growing together.